Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and click on that like button if you like my video. Also click on that notification bell. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm so glad that you are here. Welcome to my course, Complete Linux Training Course to get your dream IT job. Now let me put it in a very simple way. When you take this course, you will learn so many things about Linux that you're going to be able to apply for a Linux job and you will get the job. Fair enough? My name is Imran Afzal, and I've been in IT, specifically in Linux field, for more than 2 decades now. I have actually worked in New York City for fashion industry, for tech media firms, for financial firms, for cloud and hosting companies, you name it. I did complete my bachelor's in computer information systems from Baruch College, City University of New York, and my MBA from New York Institute of Technology. I teach in a very simple language. And I don't assume that you know a little bit or more about Linux. I will actually hold your hand every step of the way throughout this course, and I will make sure you understand everything. There are so many of my students here on Udemy who actually took this course and they were able to pass any of the Linux certification. And they were able to get the job of their dreams. So what are you waiting for? Let's go ahead and enroll.
Hey boys and girls, I have a great news for you. Do you know so many of my students who took this course got the jobs? Yes, they did. You can find all my students' testimonials in the description and review section of this course. You can check yourself that those people who followed every single lecture of this course and listened to my advice got the job of their dreams. And many of them passed the Linux certifications as well. So let's go and get this journey started.
Hello everyone. I really request you to please give me 5 minutes to go over the syllabus together. Because once you're going to go over this entire syllabus with me, you're going to know that this is the perfect and best course out there. Alright, I have actually broken down my entire course into 10 different modules. First module is about understanding Linux concept. We will cover about Linux, Unix versus Linux, and notice one thing. Every module I have included quizzes for you to do, homework to do after each module, and handouts to read. You don't really have to read each handout, but it's good to have those resources in your hand. Moving on to module 2, where we will cover download, install, and configure actual Linux machine. So we'll talk about virtual machine, downloading that virtual machine. We'll talk about what are the different ways to install a Linux machine. Then we'll cover the actual CentOS installation. I have also included the optional Red Hat Linux installation lecture as well. Then somewhat on Linux desktop, management on VM, and then again ending with quizzes, homework, and handouts. Moving on to module 3, which is about system access and file system. And that is about command prompts, accessing Linux system, downloading installed PuTTY. You need to know some important things about Linux. I have covered that. Introduction to file system. What are the different file systems that are available? Then the basic commands, cd, pwd, and ls. That's where we're going to start our Linux command lines. Moving on to a file system, as you're going to see, I'm going to skip very fast so you'll review and go over it. Directory listing, touch copy commands, finding files in directory, wildcard, soft link, hard link, quizzes, homework, and handouts. Then module 4 is about Linux fundamentals. Command syntax, change mod. This is all about permission, the file permission. Also ACL, access control, which is a detail, getting into the weeds. Getting help, tab completion, adding text to the file. Pipes, file management commands, display commands, filters command, compare files, so many commands we're going to learn in module 4. That is about Linux fundamental. And combining, splitting files, Linux versus Windows, and of course quizzes, homework, and handouts. Module 5, system administration, getting more into the actual administration part, where we'll talk about how we could VI a file, the difference between VI and win, sed, which is substitution command. We'll talk about user account management, sudo accounts, how are you could manage your Linux users through Active Directory or through the other third-party authentication. We'll also talk about difference between LDAP, ID, and WinBy and Open LDAP. Then we'll talk about system utility commands, OS maintenance command, changing system hostname, finding system information, recover root password, SOS report, environment variable, a lot more. I'm already getting out of breath and we're still on module 5. Moving on to module 6, we'll talk about all about shell scripting. I'll show you if then script, for loop scripts, do while scripts, and many scripts. Module 7, networking servers and system updates. We'll talk about networking components, bonding network ports, downloading files from the internet, SSH versus telnet. We'll talk about DNS, hostname and IP lookup, NTP, cronid, sendmail, and all these services that you see. I'm not just gonna go over real quickly. I'm actually gonna work with you to go ahead and download, install, and configure each of these servers. Then module 8 is all about disk management. We'll talk about run levels, we'll talk about disk partitions. LVM is the biggest part of this, where we're going to cover everything about LVM, adding disk, removing disk. We're going to talk about extending the existing partition, swap space, RAID, file system check, NFS, complete big topic of NFS. I covered everything from scratch. Also covered the difference between all Red Hat flavors. Module 9, okay, now up until Module 8, everything is covered on the technical side. I'm not leaving you right here. I'm actually holding your hand and taking you to Module 9 about how you should have your resume. We'll have a resume workshop, cover letter, exposure to other technologies, homework handouts. Then module 10, just like resume, I am taking you to the next level where I'm going to tell you how you should be prepared for your Linux interviews. And that is something about Linux. What is IT jobs that we have, IT management. When you apply for a Linux job, what do you need to expect? Then interview workshop, actual workshop. Then certification. If you want to get into certification, you want to get a certification in Linux, then we have 200 plus interview questions that I'm going to give it to you, and of course, handwork and handouts. And then, of course, recap. This is not part of the module, it's just a recap what we have learned from this course, and the final exam is about 100 question. I really urge you to take that so you know that you where you stand with this course. Then additional resources, I have 20 plus additional videos and lecture that you could take if you want to. Now you decide, now you be the judge. Is this course really going to make a difference in your life? Well, I'll tell you, yes it will. So please go ahead and click on enroll, and you're going to find tons of resources in this course. Good luck. Thank you so much for enrolling in my course. I am honored. Now, if you have any questions along the way while you are taking my training, please do not hesitate to send me a text message or email me, or whichever way that you prefer to contact me. Another thing I do want to ask you is that nowadays Udemy asks you for a course rating or review very early. Probably you would watch my videos for 15 to 20 minutes and you will get a pop-up window to rate my course. If you think that my course does not worth 5-star yet, then please click on skip and have it remind you to the end of this course. Then you should decide whether my course worth 5-star or not. So let's get started.
Everyday examples of Linux. Here you will find out how Linux operating system is used everywhere around you. Let's look at a few of the examples like airplane. The in-flight movies are on an embedded Linux platforms. Internet access. Internet, the Wi-Fi router probably have embedded copy of Linux running for your web management application. TV, Google search, websites, smartphones, they're all loaded with Linux operating system inside of these gadgets. Tablets, of course, the ebooks, the Windows data recovery disks,
Even they are Windows operating system, they are still running Linux to do the recovery on the Windows operating system. Isn't that funny? Appliances, new appliances that are coming in nowadays, they all have touch screens and operations like that. They are running Linux. And of course, in the end, the self-driving cars, you will find they are doing a lot of testing nowadays, and all those testing, all those little operating system running in the self-driving cars, they are running Linux.
Hey folks, so we all know Linux is an operating system. Now, of course, before I go on and explain to you what is Linux, let me take a few moments and explain to you what is an operating system. As per Wikipedia, if you Google it right now, the Wikipedia give you this definition. Operating system is a system software that manages computer hardware and software resources and provides common services for computer programs. Now, in simple words, an operating system, or in short, OS, is software that acts as a middleman or a bridge between computer hardware and the computer user. And the user is you. It provides a user interface and controls the computer hardware so that the software can function. Yes, so it is a kind of medium between you when you type something on your keyboard and you want to get a certain function executed against the hardware. So this software, this operating system will help you do that. Now there are many different type of operating systems. The first one is desktop operating systems. For example, you have Microsoft Windows on your computer, Mac OS for Apple, and Linux such as Ubuntu. Then there is server operating system, the operating system that runs at the server or enterprise level. And this operating system that we use are Windows servers at a server level, Linux distributions like CentOS or Red Hat. Then we have mobile operating system. For example, Android. So if you have a Samsung phone or other phone, then Apple, you're going to see you have an operating system called Android. Then you have iOS, specifically for Apple or iPhone devices. Then there are also the devices that has Windows mobile operating system. Then there are embedded operating systems used in devices like routers, smart TVs, automobiles, home appliances, and so on. Then there are real-time operating systems, in short RTOS, used in critical systems like medical equipment, car ECUs, aerospace, defense, network firewall, home security, and so on. So at this point, I'm sure you have a very good understanding what an operating system is because our entire course is focused on learning operating system, and that is Linux. Hey folks, in this video we are going to learn what is Linux. And of course, Linux is the primary topic of our entire course. Linux, in simple terms, is a free and open source operating system. And I'm sure by now you have a good understanding of what is an operating system. Free meaning you could download, install, and run Linux on your computer completely free without paying a single penny. Of course, there are certain other Linux distributions that require you to pay for license if you need support. Open source meaning the code that it is written on is completely open to public and you could change it depending on the requirement of your application. So it's similar to Windows and Mac OS, but it's different in several ways. Linux is very popular for stability, security, and flexibility. It can be modified and distributed by anyone, which has led to many different versions, or those versions known as distributions. By the way, distribution is something we'll cover later on, and each distribution is tailored for different uses. Its open source nature means that a community of developers and users contribute to its development. Okay, let's have a better understanding by looking at this computer. So, this computer has no operating system. It's just a piece of brick. So, what you do is you power on the computer, you open the DVD ROM tray, and you insert the DVD in that ROM tray. But of course, nowadays we don't use DVDs or CDs. So what you do is you attach an ISO image to your computer and then start the operating system installation. So installation wizard starts and you perform certain configuration at the end of the installation, it'll give you a message, welcome to Linux. Beautiful. So now you have your keyboard and your mouse attached to your computer and you send certain commands to your operating system. Some of the commands could be like, hey, print something on the printer. And your operating system give that command to the printer and it prints on the printer. Or your computer and your operating system tells the computer to go ahead and open the browser so you could get online. Okay, another thing is why learn Linux or why it is so important that we are learning Linux today. All right, I'm going to go through really quick on that. Well, Linux is widely used in servers and cloud computing. So, meaning that maybe at home you're not using Linux, you probably have Windows or Mac, but in corporate world, most of the corporate world companies use Linux as their primary operating system to run their applications. Then its software is free, so that's a philosophy they have. So you could download or run Linux completely free. It has a strong command line interface. Most of the Linux run on command line. That is why it is important that you learn the command line. There is no graphical user interface in which you could do drag and drop. Most of the time there is none, but if you want you could have that as well. But again, Linux is not popular because of its graphical user interface. Is popular because of its command line. Now, because of its command line, it gives you faster processing. Also, it gives you enhanced security. Then, because of its open source nature, it allows you to customize the way you want. Then, it gives you the community support. Also, learning Linux will give you the understanding of other operating systems as well. And the last but not the least, it gives you a lot more career opportunities. That's why we are here learning Linux, so we could level up our career or get that dream IT job. Hey folks, in this video we will cover the history of Linux. So we will start from the very beginning. What was there before Linux? Before Linux, it was an operating system called Unix, and by the way, it still exists. Developed in 1970 at AT&T Bell Labs by Ken Thompson and Dennis Ritchie. Unix was a revolutionary operating system for its time, introducing many features that would become standard. However, Unix was not freely available and had various proprietary versions. Then came GNU project. In 1983, Richard Stallman launched the GNU. GNU, it's not Unix project, with the aim of creating a free Unix-like operating system. While many tools and utilities were developed under the GNU project, a complete free OS was missing a kernel. Then Linux was born. In 1991, a 21-year-old Finland student named Linus Torvalds started developing a free operating system kernel as a hobby project. On August 25, 1991, Linus announced his project on the Minix news group with the famous words, I am doing a free operating system. Just a hobby. Won't be big and professional like GNU. All right. Then version 0.01 released in September 1991. This version, or very first version of the Linux kernel, was not functional but was released to the public to view and comment upon. Then came version 0.02, released later in 1991. This version was functional and combined with the utilities from the GNU project. It formed a complete free operating system. This combination of Linux kernel with the tools from the GNU project came to be commonly known as Linux, although some advocate for it to be called GNU/Linux. All right, let's see the growth and evolution of Linux. In early 1990s, Linux rapidly evolved through collaboration over the internet. Distributions, often referred to as distros, like Slackware and Debian, emerge, making it easier for users to get a complete Linux-based operating system. Then in 1994, 1.0 version was released with 176,000 lines of code. Then late 1990s, commercial interest in Linux grew. Companies like Red Hat and SUSE provided commercial support for Linux, making it viable for business use. Then in 2000, Linux saw significant adoption in server markets. It became the OS of choice for various emerging markets like embedded system and supercomputers. Then Android in 2007, Google released the Android OS for mobile devices, which is based on the Linux kernel. This gave Linux an enormous boost in the mobile market. All right, let's see what is it doing today. Linux has grown from a hobbyist project into a powerful force in computing, powering everything from mobile devices, personal computers, and servers to mainframes and supercomputers. The principles of open source on which Linux is based have also influenced the development of various other software projects and even fields outside of software. So, simply put, the story of Linux isn't about a computer system. It's about great people from all over the world working together and making this a reliable, secure, and open source operating system. Many thanks to them. In this lecture, we will look at the difference between Unix and Linux. But before we get into finding the differences, let's first find out what Unix is. Unix was first developed for multi-user and multitasking purposes in mid 1970s at Bell Labs Research Center by AT&T, GE, which is General Electric, and Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Okay, after that, then born Linux, which was developed by Linus Torvalds in 1991 as a free and open source alternative to Unix. It was inspired by Unix but written from scratch, so keep that in mind. Also, Unix is mostly free to use, modify, and distribute, licensed under the GNU General Public License, in short GPL. Another thing to note about Linux is open source. So now let's look at what Linux free means is that you could install Linux operating system on any of your computer hardware without purchasing or paying for its license. There are a few Linux distributions that are not free, like a Red Hat, where you would have to pay for its support and subscription. Now let's talk about the open source. Linux code was derived from Unix is actually open source to public, to the community, so they could go in and make changes to that code and make that operating system the way they wanted to function. Isn't that cool? So no one company is actually holding the code and making you do what it can do without making any changes. So just like Windows, you cannot make any changes in Windows code. You have to work with how Microsoft gives you the operating system. Okay, moving on, Unix is mostly used by Sun and the operating system is called Solaris. By the way, Sun was acquired by Oracle in 2010. All right, please note that there are also other operating systems that are used on Unix, such as HP-UX, which is by HP, AIX, and few others. Now, moving back to Linux, Linux is used mostly by developer communities or companies like Red Hat, CentOS, Debian, Fedora, SUSE, Ubuntu, and a few others. And Unix comparatively supports very few file systems. Now, what is a file system? Well, that is something we will cover later on for sure. But just to know that right now is there are very there are fewer file systems that are supported by Unix operating system. And there are a lot more file systems that are supported in Linux flavors. Okay, then Linux can be installed on a variety of computer hardware ranging from mobile phones, tablets, video games, consoles, to mainframe and supercomputers. Another thing to note is, as you know, Mac operating system cannot be installed on any other hardware except Apple hardware, right? So just like that, Unix is also or only installed on certain hardware. But when we talking about Linux, you could install Linux pretty much on every hardware running AMD or Intel processor. Okay, so folks, these are a few basics about Unix and Linux that I wanted you to know. And I'm sure you'll find a lot more information online if you're curious to learn more. In this video, we will go over the most used Linux flavors. When people refer to Linux flavors, they typically mean Linux distributions or distros for short. We have all these different distributions to serve various user needs and preferences. Here's an overview of some popular Linux distributions. The first one is Ubuntu, or sometimes people call it Ubuntu, one of the most popular distributions, especially for those new to Linux. It is based on Debian. It provides a user-friendly experience and is backed by Canonical Limited. Then the next one is Fedora, sponsored by Red Hat. It is known for its cutting-edge features and innovations. Fedora Workstation is used for desktop users. Fedora Server and Fedora Silverblue used as a version that does not change. These are some of its flavors. Then Debian, a community-driven project known for its stability, provides the foundation for many other distributions, including Ubuntu. Then we have a Red Hat Enterprise Linux, in short, RHEL, a commonly backed distribution from Red Hat, designed for businesses and enterprises, provides long-term support, stability, and enterprise-level features. A lot of companies, I would say about roughly about 70 to 80% of the corporate environment uses RHEL. Then we have CentOS or CentOS, a free and open source clone of RHEL, designed to provide a similar experience without the associated costs. However, its direction has changed after CentOS 8 with the introduction of CentOS Stream. Then Arch Linux, a rolling release system that's known for its simplicity and customization. Users build their system from the ground up, choosing components they desire. It has a well-known version named Manjaro that tries to make using Arch simpler. Then the next one is OpenSUSE. Comes in two main flavors: Tumbleweed, which is the rolling release, and Leap, which is a regular release and is sponsored by SUSE Linux. The next one is Linux Mint. Based on Ubuntu, it provides a more detailed and traditional desktop experience. It comes with built-in special tools to play media. Then the next one is Gen 2, source-based distribution, where users compile software from source code, highly customizable and optimized for the user's specific hardware. Then comes the next one, which is Slackware, one of the oldest distribution known for its simplicity and minimalism. The next one is Alpine Linux, a lightweight distribution designed for security, simplicity, and resource efficiency, making it popular for containerized applications. Then the last one, but not the least one because there are a lot more, Kali Linux, a distribution designed for digital forensics and penetration testing. These are just some of the many Linux distributions available. Each distribution has its unique features, strengths, target audience, and philosophy. The right distribution for a user typically depends on their needs, preferences, and intended use case. Now, if you are getting into Linux and you wanted to actually, your end goal is to get a job in Linux in corporate world, then I would strongly recommend that you go with CentOS, which is the exact replica of Red Hat Enterprise Linux and is mostly used in all the corporate world. Hey folks, in this video we are going to learn who are the biggest users of Linux. So, Linux is used by a wide range of users and organizations due to its versatility, stability, and open source natures, which we have discussed previously as well. Now, the first one is developers. Programmers and developers commonly use the Linux for coding as it support a wide range of programming languages and development tools. Then we have educational institutions. Schools and universities often use Linux for computer science and education research. Then let's talk about the government agencies. There are many government bodies worldwide uses Linux, especially for tasks requiring stability and security. Now, in US, many agencies rely on Linux, such as Department of Defense, National Security Agency, Federal Aviation Administration, NASA, FBI, and so on. Then enterprise and businesses. Many businesses, ranging from small companies to a large corporation, use Linux for servers, desktops, and their data centers. In USA, enterprises like Walmart, Boeing, McDonald's, Bank of America, New York Stock Exchange, General Motors, Pfizer, and many more all uses Linux. Then we have tech companies. Of course, many tech companies uses Linux primarily. Who are those? Like Google, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, Oracle, Intel, IBM, and many more. Then comes the cloud and web servers. Linux dominates the web server market with popular server distribution like Ubuntu Server, CentOS, Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Then we have supercomputer and research facilities. Most research facilities often use Linux for complex and computational tasks. Then we have telecommunication and networking. Linux is used by networking and telecommunication companies such as AT&T, Nokia, Vodafone, T-Mobile, and so on. Okay, and the last one is media and entertainment, but of course there are many, many more. I tell you that. I'm just listing a few. Linux is also used in the film and media industry, especially for graphics and animation production. Companies like Pixar, DreamWorks, Sony Pictures, Netflix all uses Linux. Now, the reason I went through all these different users and organizations is because so you would know that Linux is used everywhere, and by the time you're done learning this course, you will be so valuable to all these companies who are looking for Linux individuals every day. Hey folks, In this lecture, we'll go over the difference between Linux and Windows. It is important that you know the differences because many times people will ask you this question during your technical interview. What do you prefer to use as your own desktop? Do you like Linux or Windows? And if you do, then why would you choose one or the other? So it's better that you should know the differences between both operating systems. All right, we'll start with availability of source code. Linux is open source, and this makes the source code free for everyone to read, study, modify, and redistribute. This helps in providing a maximum customization level. Then, Windows is proprietary software designed by Microsoft, right? Its source code are unavailable in the public domain. This means that the user can only alter the system to a very limited degree. Okay, then the cost. Well, Linux is completely free. Yes, whichever flavor that you want to download, install is completely free. Now, if you're thinking, hey, wait a second, how about Red Hat? I heard you have to pay for the Red Hat. Well, let me clarify this. To download and install the Red Hat ISO image and operating system, it is completely free. But if you want to use its subscription and support, only then you will have to pay for Red Hat. Okay, Windows, of course, we all know you have to pay for it every time you buy a computer or a laptop. It comes with Windows, and you're probably thinking, I don't have to pay for Windows. Well, you do because your cost that you paid for your computer is actually included with the Windows software. All right, moving on, user interface. Um, Linux, there are different desktop environments like GNOME, KDE, and XFCE available in Linux. Each provides different user interface to users. The users have the choice of GUI and even can further customize it. But let me tell you one thing. In corporate environment, the Linux operating systems that are installed on those servers do not have graphical user interface. Yes, they are the administrators or engineers, they manage and run Linux using command line interface. Okay, Windows, there's a standard GUI amongst all the Windows versions. We all know that. It is user friendly for and ever users. It is less customizable than Linux, of course. All right, then moving on to command line interface. I was saying Linux console is at very core of Linux. Very strong terminal applications and much more support in field of scripting come under this category. When we talk about Windows, it does have command prompt and PowerShell, but most users and administrators will do many things through the GUI. PowerShell is very powerful, but it is not as common used by regular users. All right, let's talk about the software installation and package management. In Linux, software is generally installed using package managers like apt, yum, or pacman, which are designed to handle dependency. When Windows software is mostly installed using standalone executable like exe file, you have to have it on your computer and double click it and run it. Otherwise, you from Microsoft Store as well, you could download it. So installation often needs manual handling of dependencies. In Linux, you could just run it and it will do everything for you, the download install for you. All right, let's talk about security. All right, Linux, due to being open source and developed with robust permission systems and having fewer users, Linux is generally considered the most secure in that it is seldom ever at risk from a malware. Yes, it is. In short, it is a lot secure than many other operating systems. Windows, as you are part of the large user base for Windows, you become a more likely target of malware. But I tell you this, Microsoft has significantly enhanced Windows security, of course, through utilities such as like a Windows Defender, although still somewhat more vulnerable than Linux. Okay, let's talk about system stability and performance. Linux, this operating system is known for its stability and performance. It can efficiently run not only on new hardware but also on older hardware. It is mostly used in servers and systems with a long uptime rating. Yes, that's the beauty of Linux because you could install and run Linux for months and years without having to reboot it. Okay, when it comes to Windows, although Windows is stable, it tends to slow down after some time due to registry blot, fragmentation, and other issues like background processes, updates that keep on increasing. All right, let's talk about the last difference. There are a lot more, of course, but I have picked the most important ones, and that is file system. Linux file system in use by Linux are ext4, XFS, and BTRFS. It's considered everything as a file that includes all the hardware devices too. Its directory structure is hierarchical, beginning from the root, which is slash. Now, in Windows, the primary file system in use by Windows are NTFS and FAT32. It uses drive letters and separate the file system from the user data into different directories. That's about Linux and Windows. And again, you should find out more differences about Linux and Windows, but I tell you that you will be surprised. Don't be surprised when you will be asked this question during your technical interview. So definitely you should know all these differences. Good luck.